Boba Fett? Boba Fett? Where? Welcome to Applesauce and Baloney, talking Book of Boba Fett, Disney Plus. I'm Thor.
I'm Eric.
And
wow. let's get in some Boba Baloney.
So yeah,
go ahead.
No, I mean, it's like I'm gushing. I'm happy. We got more Star Wars. It's we didn't have long to wait from our dry spell after Spider-Man, and here we are, able to nerd out about more stuff. Exciting. Always happy to talk about Star Wars. Book of Boba Fett.
Yeah, man, give me all the Star Wars, man. Or as I like to call it, Mandalorian methadone. So I want that more Mandalorian. I love Mandalorian. And there's definitely something to be said for, we can get into this, legacy versus a non-legacy character. The Mandalorian is quickly becoming a canon, a central canon figure in Star Wars and a legacy character. But, it was, there was an excitement to not knowing anything about him. But I'm just as excited to see. I think they've done a really good job setting up where has Boba Fett been other than in the belly of the Sarlacc? Right. Where's Boba Fett been?
Yeah,
and I think we're gonna get into it on this show.
Yeah, and the Mandalorian, to go back to that, set up a really great basis to be excited for Boba Fett. I was not one of those people that has been Boba Fett crazy for since I saw Star Wars. He's a cool character. He's a cool bounty hunter.
In fact, I remember when Mandalorian was coming out and we knew it was coming and we're like, oh, it's this Mandalorian show. I remember us talking and you actually saying, I hope it's not Boba Fett. I hope it's not, and then after it came out, you were glad that it wasn't Boba Fett, that they actually just went this whole other way. And it's kind of funny now because some of the criticism I'm seeing online is everybody was kind of bashing on Mandalorian right off the bat because it wasn't Boba Fett.
Right.
And now they're kind of doing the same thing to Boba Fett because it's not exactly like the Mandalorian. And well, they're not. Boba Fett isn't a Mandalorian. He's who he is. Yeah. He owns his armor, but he's a different character than the Mandalorian. I think that's going to take some adjustment. Besides the fact that there are some obligatory... I mean, if I have one criticism about this first episode of Boba Fett, I felt like it had to do some things for the fan service. Yeah. And it did... And unlike Mandalorian, where Mandalorian, because he wasn't a known character, could kind of take its time and work us into an Ahsoka or the big-time Luke Skywalker cameo, Boba Fett had to get right out front. It was obligatory, and it felt like it. It was obligatory, him being in the Sarlacc pit. We had to... I think later on the show we're going to get more of the Sarlacc pit, maybe in a more interesting flashback. But I definitely got that... some of the things I heard about this first episode was, it was boring, or it was predictable, or it was kind of ho-hum. Well, that's what happens when you get what you ask for. When you say, I want Boba Fett, and I want... Well... You're going to have to... I mean, everybody... Had they just ignored the fact that he was in the Sarlacc pit and they picked up the story, probably where the storytellers wanted to pick it up, where it's more about his, him trying to take over Jabba's empire or whatever. Yeah. This whole last week, we would have been hearing about well, what about the Sarlacc pit? Yeah. So, Robert Rodriguez got that out of the way,
Yeah, you and I have talked about this ad nauseum in the past. And it kind of hits the same problem that I think the Solo... movie hit, is that when you're, like you said, when you're dealing with these legacy characters, especially for how long Star Wars has been in media, with the books and the comics and everything that's come before, there are things that fans are expecting. There are things that we've built up in our own minds about how these characters are. The same criticism with the Luke Skywalker from Episode 8, the same criticism with the Solo movie. There are things that fans want and fans expect, and we have to give the filmmakers the room to tell their stories. You mentioned The Mandalorian. Mandalorian gave all the leeway, all the latitude, because it was a new character. Just like the Clone Wars. Yeah, we were dealing with Obi-Wan and Anakin, but we got Ahsoka, we got the clones. The Bad Batch is telling an all new, amazing story. It gets to do its own thing. So we have to give this first episode of Boba Fett a little bit of leeway because it's doing the heavy lifting to, one, tell the people that maybe don't know a lot about Boba Fett who this guy is, and two, it's if they didn't do the Sarlacc pit and they didn't show us how Boba Fett got out, the fans would be mad. They showed us how Boba Fett got out of the Sarlacc, the fans are mad. That's the way this divisive fandom is going to be. It's just the way it's going to be.
Right. And to go back to your Solo point, that's a perfect analogy because what room is really left to tell an interesting story if you're a storyteller and you want to not just do what's expected after we have to show Han and Chewie meeting. And if they did something different where they already met, then we'd be mad about it.
Right.
We have to show Han winning the Falcon from Lando. It doesn't. You would think, oh well, does it have to be in there? Yeah. If you're going for that Star Wars base, they're gonna be mad. So I mean, and then I love how much Rian Johnson just comes right. That's episode 8's my favorite one because he comes right out and Luke Skywalker tells you he's talking to Rey, but he's really talking to the fan base, going like, "What do you want me to do? Go fight the whole Empire with my laser sword?" Like it would be if we got the Luke Skywalker that everybody said they wanted. In episode 8, they would have bashed on it harder than sad, grumpy Luke,
right?
And
which is ultimately the Luke Skywalker that we got at the end of Mandalorian, which was an amazing scene, but that can't be the Luke Skywalker that goes all the way forward. He's on a trajectory,
and they earned it, right? And they earned it. It was a 5-minute scene at the end of 2 seasons of The Mandalorian, which went out of its way to steer clear. For most of that run of any legacy stuff, even mention of a legacy character like a Han Solo or a Luke Skywalker. We don't even in episode 8, they don't, he doesn't even say his name. We know who he is, but he's not like, oh, hi, I'm Luke Skywalker, the guy who blew up the Death Star. But, and I kind of, on this note, I kind of thought about that with this first episode of Boba Fett. I feel like Robert Rodriguez is kind of doing the same thing. As here we're seeing a Boba Fett who's trying to change who he is, and no one's accepting it. He's trying to break out of the shackles of who he's expected to be, which is just this bounty hunter, and it's not going well for him. In this first episode, Boba Fett's a badass, but we're really kind of seeing he's barely being taken serious by the other crime lords. The mayor won't even come and see him. So I think he's very self-aware. I feel like Robert Rodriguez and the creators of Boba Fett, Favreau, I think they're very aware of the expectations and they're trying to subvert it. And I think some of the lower reviews or the complaints I've seen about this first episode of Boba Fett, my reaction was, oh, awesome. I love Star Wars. This is pretty much what I expected this first episode to be. Now I'm excited. Now I feel like that since they've gotten all that out of the way, the Sarlacc pit and getting him on the throne and getting him into Tatooine, now I'm excited about seeing where the story's going to go.
Right. Yeah.
This next week.
And I, don't get me wrong, I enjoyed this episode. I sit a little bit more on the side of the people that didn't. I loved it. I'm not saying I didn't like it, but I had a hard time getting into it because I think my brain was ready for The Mandalorian. It wanted that style, it wanted that pacing, it wanted the gravitas that show was giving us. And straight off the bat, this is not that show. It is a slower show. Mm-hmm. It's doing different building. It's got a completely different director. Robert Rodriguez is doing the bulk of it. And yeah, we got a cool episode that he did before, but this is going to be a completely different style, form, and function.
Well, it's going to be El Mariachi, the bounty hunter. I mean, it's going to be very much the Robert Rodriguez run and gun, rebel without a crew kind of, almost B-movie version. And you can tell. I mean, this. I don't want to say it's cheaply shot, but you can definitely tell there's a different budgetary vibe or just a different vibe in this book.
It doesn't have the spit and polish that Disney gave The Mandalorian because they had more time, they had more money. Yeah,
I mean, and I'm a big fan of, and Rod Rodriguez, his style rubs people. You either kind of dig it or you don't, and so I get that too. But again, they've obviously got budget, but I just don't. I feel like this show happened pretty quick. I think that this show probably got developed like halfway through, season 1, maybe into the writing of season 2. And they're like, well, okay, let's see if we're really popping off and we want to do some spin-off shows. I guess Boba Fett is, everybody's been clamoring for it. But I think that there's a lot that I think we're in for some surprises. I think that they've done what's been expected of them. We had to see him crawl out of the Sarlacc pit. They teased this little him walking in and blowing away Bib Fortuna and Jabba's palace. But I think we're going to get into, and I'm kind of excited. I wanted to go into the timeline of when I think we're flashing back to with Boba Fett here, because obviously, so Mandalorian takes place like 5-6 years after Return of the Jedi, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. So I think here's the reason I think we're going to go back and see more of the Sarlacc pit. I think when he crawls out, the Sarlacc pit is obviously dead, and because it's not moving around. Yeah. So to me, I think it's pretty obviously dead. Second, the wreckage looks kind of already old and picked over from Return of the Jedi. So I would have to believe, and if we go back to C-3PO telling our heroes in Return of the Jedi, you're going to be digested over a course of 1,000 years, and you and I know, being Star Wars uber nerds, that the Sarlacc pit, at least in the comic book canon, Legends canon, kept you alive. So there were people it kept you alive for like 10,000 years and slowly digested you by somehow it would attach to you and feed you nutrients from other and then keep you alive as like a food source. Yeah. So, I think
I was just going to say, I think that goes into the explanation of how we get the stormtrooper that he ultimately saves himself with. Because a lot of people have been complaining, and even caught myself off guard when I was watching. I'm like, wait, there weren't any stormtroopers on the sail barge, but there's been stormtroopers on Tatooine for God knows how long. They could have fallen in when they were looking around for R2-D2. Who knows how long the stormtrooper's been in there, especially if it takes over 1,000 years. I think that's a fine explanation for that. But yeah, to your point, this scene could take place anywhere between a day after he falls into the Sarlacc to a couple of years after he falls into the Sarlacc.
Before, from the moment he wakes up and we see him flamethrower, and and he pulls the stormtrooper. I guess stormtroopers have oxygen now, but he somehow pulls the stormtrooper's oxygen tube or whatever and charges himself up. And then, that could have happened. He still could have been trying to get out of that Sarlacc pit for a couple years. It could be. And so I think, we've got a passage of time there, and then we've got, the time that he obviously spends with the Tuskens. And I got to believe, if he's learned to wield that gaffy stick the way we see him, and also we have to account for the time that he's not looking for his armor with Cobb Vanth.
Right.
And obviously Cobb Vanth from, season, what is it? Season 2? Yeah. Season 2 of Mandalorian. He obviously has that armor for a while because he's like the protector of this town.
He's made a history of himself wearing the armor. So yeah,
he's
had it for probably a year.
Yeah. Right. Well, and we set up, I was thinking about this the other day, they set up that Cobb Vanth finds the armor after escaping right after the second Death Star blows up, which is about a week after they blow up Jabba's sail barge. And then Cobb Vanth finds the Jawas. He finds Boba Fett's armor that the Jawas pick off of him. So that kind of sets the timeline to where Boba Fett actually gets out pretty close to after that, because otherwise it wouldn't match up where Cobb Vanth is out in the desert and is riding around with the Jawas. So actually, he probably wasn't down in the Sarlacc pit for that long. But it makes me wonder: did the sail barge explosion kill the Sarlacc? Is that's kind of went through my head too?
No, I think they're setting up that it's our hero that kills the Sarlacc. Because obviously it's still feeding and digesting when he wakes up. So I think they're proposing that on his way out of the Sarlacc, he kills the Sarlacc. Doing the ultimate, killing the monster to be reborn situation. Ultimately leading us into the scene that Patton Oswalt gives us in Parks and Rec during his little speech where he talks about the Fist of Boba Fett coming
his
from
filibuster.
The sand. Which is in a funny way almost beat for beat what happens in the show. So I wonder how much of that was actually.
That whole Patton Oswalt from Parks and Rec, that gives that calls back to one of his stand-up routines, where he did during the prequels, where just about like, George Lucas, I'm going to show you, Boba Fett. Did you like Boba Fett? Oh, well, now he's a kid and it's sad.
Yeah.
So I mean, they've kind of, there was definitely a wink and a nod from Favreau and Rodriguez to the sort of the Patton Oswalt fanboy that's kind of a critical of a lot of the new Star Wars, just going like, okay, see, here's what you wanted. Yeah. And that's to my point. That's why I think we're seeing some of these very same people. I mean, again, don't get me wrong, I love Patton Oswalt, but I always sort of rejected those criticisms. And again, he was being funny. He's doing stand-up. Obviously, Patton Oswalt loves Star Wars. But, there is something to be said for, when you get what you think you want, it's not really what you want.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm hoping that this first episode of Boba Fett felt underwhelming to people because it was doing so many things that we already expected. And now I'm hoping this next week, I will be bummed if it doesn't start going in some new and surprising ways. And, I just don't want to see Boba Fett basically running around with his jetpack and his flamethrower, just doing what we expect.
Yeah.
Yes, there's going to be that, but I'd like to see some other stuff.
They have to give us. This episode didn't set up at all what this series is going to be about, other than him wanting to become the crime lord of Tatooine. There's no motivation. There's no backstory. They have still yet to really reveal what's going to happen.
Why does he want to do this? I mean, like, we know from The Mandalorian he wants his armor back. Okay, gotcha. It was his dad's armor. It's his armor. That's his armor. But yeah, I have not properly been explained to why it is that he...
Why does he want to be the crime lord? It's like... From everything I knew of Boba Fett going beforehand, he was a bounty hunter. Why would he want to supplant Jabba the Hutt? What's the reason behind that? Is it something to do with his teaming up with Fennec Shand? Is it something that happens during his time with the Sand People?
Right.
Which I'm really excited about. I can't wait to see more of the Sand People stuff. I'm really excited about that storyline.
Me too.
I hope they give us a lot of that. I'm actually wondering if Fennec Shand isn't one of the Sand People. But I'm really curious to see how they flesh out these Sand People. There's people that are wondering if one of the main leader Sand person is actually a clone, because they're looking at it and they're like, oh, it looks like he has clone trooper armor on underneath all his rags. I don't think that's the case. I think they're just Sand People. But I'm super intrigued in this story, and I can't wait for them to actually give us a backstory to Boba Fett.
Right. Yeah, and I agree with the Sand People thing, the Tusken Raider, them, and they started this in The Mandalorian, but I like that they're making them more fleshed out and more sentient. Like there's just been this long arc of the Sand People in Star Wars. I mean, they're there from the very first moment. They're sort of like temple guardians for Luke as he's going out to find R2-D2 and C-3PO and ends up with Obi-Wan Kenobi. So like Tusken Raiders are woven into the DNA of Star Wars, but they've just been sort of like the very problematic, sort of native stereotype.
Yeah.
Whereas they started it in Mandalorian, and I really like that he's learning to be one of them. It's very dances with dewbacks, here with Boba Fett and the Tusken Raiders, and I like it. I think I think that's probably the other thing that is maybe something that people aren't the biggest fan of, but I'm like, let him tell the story.
Yeah.
Boba Fett would get quickly boring if it was just what I think a lot of people think they want it to be, which is him flying around.
Which was episode 1.
In the fire spray. Right, him flying around in the fire spray and taking down badass bounties and stuff like that. But I mean, that's what they're saying in this first episode is like, I'm not a bounty hunter anymore. I want to be, or that's what they're saying in the trailers that I guess we're getting to is he doesn't. But yeah, why does he? I think you're onto something where something has to happen with how he sees Bib Fortuna and the Hutt's empire running Tatooine. As to why, because again, he's just doing a job for Jabba. Like he's just this pimp badass in Return of the Jedi who's just kind of chilling on the sandbar. You know, he's caught Han Solo. There's all this stuff going on, and then he jumps down and he gets Boba Fett right into the Sarlacc pit, and then that's it. But why did when he finishes up with the Mandalorian, why does he go in and just blow away Bib Fortuna's whole crew? Like why?
Yeah.
He didn't. It's not like Jabba threw him in the Sarlacc pit or Bib Fortuna threw him in. But maybe we're finding out. I don't know. But I'm interested to see.
It's all gonna deal with what Boba Fett's backstory actually is. Why was he originally working with the Empire? Why was he working with Darth Vader? Was it a begrudging thing? Because the young Boba Fett that we get in the Clone Wars doesn't necessarily lead up to the Boba Fett that we get in Empire. He's out for different things, and then we get bounty hunter Boba Fett that's working with Vader and Jabba. So I'm curious what story they're going to tell.
Do you think we're going
to? Go ahead.
Do you think we're going to see Bossk? Do you think because bringing up the young Boba Fett, there's a good arc there where he's hanging out with Aurra Sing. Who's another minor character? We're hanging out with Aurra Sing and Bossk, the Trandoshan bounty hunter.
It'll be interesting to see if we get any other flashbacks to earlier before the Sarlacc, to any younger Boba Fett stuff with him and maybe the other bounty hunters, or see some of him.
Some of those other bounty hunters,
Vader
some of those other
Jabba.
Yeah. But some of those other, I don't even think it has to be a flashback. There's nothing in the canon. I mean, there's storylines that happen to all these other bounty hunters, IG-88 and Bossk and Dengar and the Gand one. I used to know all their names. Zuckuss. Zuckuss, the bug-eyed helmet guy. Yeah. I mean, there's nothing that says that those characters aren't still out there someplace.
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, like, I know there's Boba Fett purists out there, and I know there's people that are so into Mandalorian that they have their own language and stuff, and there's these huge groups. I honestly kind of want them to go and, like, really do a 180 on who Boba Fett is, where, like, everyone's looking at Boba Fett as being such a badass. And, like, Boba Fett kind of gets the short end of the stick in Jedi, and like based on how he's fighting in this episode, in Mandalorian he was kicking Stormtrooper butt, but like he's kind of a clumsy oaf in this one. Like he blew a missile at a shield and blew him and Fennec Shand up. He doesn't really understand the politics of Tatooine. I kind of felt like he didn't know what was going on in a way, and I'm curious about that, and I just wonder how much of what Boba Fett is to the fandom versus how much of what Boba Fett's going to be, and I'm curious what that is, honestly.
Right. Well, I mean, and again, this goes back to it being a little bit of it's troublesome to tell a fresh story with not just a character from another movie series, but such a legacy, I know we keep using that word, but that's what he is. I mean, he's probably one of the legacy characters we know the least about.
Yeah.
Like but here's the Boba Fett I need to have explained to me. Again, see, I'm just like these other fans. I have expectations, and that gets in the way of them telling a fresh story. But they have to be true to who this character is. And who this character is, the only real speaking lines he has when we first meet him in the original trilogy in episode 5, and that he actually doesn't say anything in 6 other than but in 5, I mean, he straight up, I think this is one of the things, especially for our generation, what made Boba Fett so badass is literally everybody's afraid. Everybody is afraid of Darth Vader except for 3 people: Moff Tarkin, the Emperor, and Boba Fett.
Yeah.
Boba Fett straight up is like he's worth nothing to me. And even Vader has a completely different reaction when Lando isn't happy the way the deal is going. He's just like, well, pray I don't alter it any further. Boba Fett is like, hey man, like damaged goods, and Vader's like, we'll make sure you're compensated.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, like, so to go from that guy who's obviously so in the know, like he's, you know, and he's obviously got history with Vader too, which I hope that they get into in this show, because Vader's like, no disintegrations, you know, so they've worked together before, and then again, there's a ton of books and comic books, all part of Legends now, not officially canon, but there's whole storylines of Boba Fett like chilling with Vader and has a history with Vader. And so, I mean, again, they've got to get past all those expectations that we have of who this character is, and some of it insurmountable. I mean, again, they could be the coolest. I challenge anybody that says, oh, I thought this Boba Fett was kind of boring or whatever. I'm like, okay, well then tell me what you would have done.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, how would you... Tell me how you would have made Boba Fett as cool as, you know, because he's on this pedestal. He's very much on a pedestal.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and that's ultimately the hard part. That's the thing that I think is going to be hardest for this show to overcome.
Right.
It's the thing, again, it's what Solo was up against. I like Solo as a movie. I had a hard time, again, when I first watched it. Watching it now, it is one of my favorite Star Wars movies. Of course, I'm never going to be able to put them in a list of which one I like, you know, over the other one, because it's Star Wars, and I do love it all.
And the guy who played Solo was great. The guy who played Solo was great. But how do you you know, not just Harrison Ford, but one of the most iconic characters of all time.
Yeah.
And then you're going to play a younger version of that. I mean, again, there's a lot of expectations there.
Yeah. So we've talked a lot about like what this show could be and our feelings about the character, but I want to get into favorite parts of the show. For me, my favorite part, walking into the cantina, we get the cantina song with Max Rebo and Fringe Jan. We get, you know, all the droids. We get the cantina folk. We get an R3X droid that's dealing out whatever game they're playing, whether it's Sabak or whatever. So happy to see that. I'm happy for the fan service for Max Rebo. I'm happy for the fan service for the Cantina Band song, the Disney tie-in.
I was very happy. I was very happy to see Max Rebo, but I have a question for you.
How do you get off the barge?
Right. I mean, I didn't. I mean, I'm pretty sure that shows them kind of chilling and playing on the sail barge. I mean, did we just assume that the band that does not play on like on the Titanic, and when everything starts going sideways, the band bails off the back of the barge? Is that what we're led to believe?
So I've meant to do it. I haven't gone back and rewatched that scene. I'm sure people have. I'm sure there's criticism about it.
Right. Because it's obviously Max Rebo. Yeah, it's obviously Max Rebo.
To my memory, I don't remember the band playing during the fight sequence. So it does lend credence to the fact that they could have left the ship. I've heard people in the past say, well, maybe they were on a different barge because Jabba has a couple of different skiffs around him.
Right. No.
I think this is just one of those places where we're going to have to suspend our disbelief. Max Rebo got off the skiff. He's in the cantina.
I love it.
I'm fine with it.
I think somewhere I have a comic book. I have like a 3-issue comic book run of Max Rebo's band and their adventures before they end up on Jabba. So no, I no one was more happy to see Max Rebo and the three Biff musicians from the original Cantina. I loved all that fan service.
Which I need that song.
DJ Rex.
I need that song now. They have to release that on the soundtrack. I have the single CD of the Cantina Band song. I need a copy of the new lounge version of the Cantina song. Has to happen. Right. But what was your favorite part of the show?
I think probably my favorite part was the thing that got me excited about where the show could go was the scene with the mayor's major domo. I mean, what a dick This guy, and again, this guy comes in here and he's fully like, oh, I guess you can kill me. Fennec Shan's trying to flex on him, and he's like, I guess you can kill me. That's I mean, and just the tentacles on this guy to say, not only am I not bringing you a tribute, but actually you need to pay us a tribute. And so I'm kind of excited to see now. I maybe it's that Ithorian that I think is Doc Ondar. That's the mayor.
It is, and they've named him. He's not Doc Ondar. He's Doc something else. So Baloney diminished. Go ahead and throw that in the garbage.
Fine.
But yeah, no. There's been a lot of criticism about that scene, and a lot of people saying they really disliked the acting in that scene. I actually really dug that guy, and I'm completely blanking his name. I guess he's a really, really popular improv comedian. It's been around for a while.
Oh, cool.
I dug that scene. I thought he was perfect.
It made me, It was. I think it was one of the things that I didn't expect. Yeah. So I got a lot of things I expected. We had Boba Fett in the armor, the fight scene with the shield guys. Him kind of walking around. I also I'd probably have to say him sparing the two Gamorrean guards. Right. I'm in love with these Gamorrean guards. They're my new favorite side characters because they're just like. They're just like they're puppy dogs.
Yeah,
they're like okay.
I do have one criticism about the Gamorrean guards. Why are all the Gamorrean guards now buff MMA guys? Like, we get the Gamorreans that are fighting in the arena. They're these buff MMA guys. Now these two guys are buff MMA guys. Where's my big fat Gamorreans at? Like, that's all we got in the original. I want to see those guys.
They got eaten by rancors.
Right. But stop fat shaming the Gamorreans. Let them be happy in their own body image, right? We don't need to don't force us on skinny Gamorreans. It's not really a criticism. It's weird.
I thought these two Gamorrean guards were. I know what you're saying. In the Mandalorian scene when they're in the fight club, those Gamorrean guards, I was like, damn, these guys are like svelte.
They're cut. Yeah,
these are svelte ass. These are cut up. These are ripped. These Gamorreans are ripped. These other two looked a little more like the Gamorreans that we remember. Yeah. I think it's just one of those things where to be able to move and do the things is.
Oh, I'm sure.
I mean, you and I love the original Gamorrean guards, but those suits there just shuffling around. I mean, I can't imagine doing that to somebody in an actual.
There's no action scenes in those big Gamorrean suits. There just isn't.
I mean, all they have to do is this in the original.
Yeah.
It's like a little bit of flailing and Luke's choking him, and then that's it. But no, I loved the Major Domo. I think it's set up. I'm pretty excited for this confrontation with the mayor, and I like the idea that Boba Fett just can't. He's a badass. We all know he's a badass, but the show's going to get boring real quick.
Yeah.
If he doesn't have a conflict, and so like you've been saying, I'm excited to see what his character motivations are for wanting to take over Jabba's empire. What happened in his 7 years in the desert or whatever with the Tusken Raiders. I'm down for it. And again, you and I are probably the worst critics of Star Wars because as I've told people many times, the next Star Wars movie could just be George Lucas counting all my money, and I'd be like, it was amazing.
Yeah.
So take it for what it is. Sit back, buckle up. We're gonna have more Boba Fett coming. Lots to talk about with other stuff we're gonna get to. I think we're gonna be off for a couple weeks.
Yeah, we're gonna try to get a couple episodes out. I'm gonna be on vacation. I have a Disney World trip that's planned, so we're gonna see if we can cue something up for you guys. If you don't hear us,
I'm looking forward to more Disney World videos.
Yeah,
another Disney World video.
So if you don't hear from us for a couple of weeks, I apologize. We tried really hard to stay on track during the holidays, and just life is getting in the way. But just look forward to tons more content coming. We're gonna have another Boba Fett episode this week. Then there's next week and the week after we're going to talk probably a little bit Doctor Strange. We're keep saying we're going to talk about Cowboy Bebop. It's coming.
We're getting there. We're getting there. We just have to line you up, me up, and my brother, because we do have a lot to say about, and you're getting pieces of the episode at the end of each of these episodes.
Yeah.
But got a lot to say. I've got some major beef with Netflix and the way that they're doing their shows. So we're going to get into that. Again, we don't like to be negative, but it's getting to the point, Netflix, where you're like Lucy in the football. I'm not going to play anymore if you're going to keep taking the football away.
Yeah.
But more Boba Fett, and like and subscribe. Get us there. That's my New Year's resolution for 2022. Is let's be an official YouTube channel, people.
Yep. Help us get to 100 subscribers on YouTube, and then let's go beyond. Help us get to the point where
so close.
where this channel is actually paying for us to be here, and it would make it a lot easier to schedule our time, because then we wouldn't have to be working our normal jobs. Long shot. Yeah. I know, but here's hoping. But hey,
if Boba Fett can crawl out, if he can get out of the Sarlacc pit, anything's possible.
Yeah. So like Eric said, like, share, subscribe, drop a comment. Let us know what you thought of the episode. Let us know what you thought of this episode. If we missed anything, if there's something that you really liked about the episode, let us know. Until then, more to come.